I've been into jets for a long time. Back in 1993, my dad brought home UN Squadron on Super Nintendo when I was a mere 4 years old, and not only were these some of my earliest memories, they were my earliest gaming memories. This led to me ultimately joining the United States Air Force and has massively impacted the direction my life has taken in the last decade. So you can say I've literally been raised on jets and gaming. Having played a large assortment of aircraft games over the years on both console and PC, a recurring thought keeps circulating through my mind. What is stopping us from creating the perfect ace combat? Why aren't all the best elements of each iteration combined to create the perfect installment? This is going to be a largely subjective video, as you may not agree with me on what elements are the strongest, and that's okay. This is just my opinion on what the perfect ace combat would look like. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into what I hope one day will become a reality. I had played a very minimal amount of the first Ace Combat on my cousin's PlayStation 1 back in the late 90s, but due to never personally owning a PS1, it never really caught on with me, although I did thoroughly enjoy my short bouts of playing it when we hung out. In the early 2000s, I fluctuated between primarily playing PC and lightly playing on console. In 2001, I received my first PS2 for Christmas, and with it, my first game, Ace Combat 4. Thanks, Dad. This was a paradigm shift in flight sim gaming for me, as I was primarily fumbling around in Jane's F-15 on PC at this time, which was a remarkable simulator in those days. Ace Combat 4 brought with it a whole new world of story, fandom, and lore. I was hooked instantly, playing it over and over until getting my hands on Operation Flashpoint in 2002 and getting sucked into that incredible world, but that's a whole other story. Ace Combat 4 was beautiful for its time and really pulled you into the story with its hand-drawn intermission expositions explaining the backstory on why you were fighting. It was great at giving you a reason to care about what you're doing in the game, and that's something that so many games these days miss, giving you a reason to care. Ace Combat 4's story and characters were mysterious and engaging, and the relatively realistic premise and geopolitical turmoil in the world of Strange Reel mirrored that of our own world, which helped the believability of the story overall. The most interesting part of the story is that you see it from the semi-neutral perspective of a young boy who finds himself a victim of war, crushing hard on a girl who works to entertain the very enemy who inadvertently killed his family. This dynamic would begin to shift after discovering the leader of the group was the man who shot down the aircraft, sending an out-of-control jet into the home where his family lived. You see the story unfold from the enemy's perspective while actively playing the main protagonist that's known only as Mobius 1. Seeing the story in this way invests you into the plot and makes you care not only for your side but the enemy as well. Fast forward to 2004, and what is largely considered the epitome of the Ace Combat franchise installments is born. Ace Combat 5: The Unsung War, or known more commonly to our European friends as Ace Combat 5: Squadron Leader, even though you never command anything larger than a flight, but whatever. Combining the campy story elements of Ace Combat 4, Ace Combat 5 comes with enhanced graphics and a very robust storyline with twists and turns and choice. Oh man, the choice. Not only in massively increased number of aircraft to choose from and the ability to customize the individual aircraft of your wingmen, but also the ability to answer certain questions throughout the campaign missions, which would sometimes affect the mission route you would take. The theme here is choice, and choice in a game like Ace Combat equates to replayability. I would argue that Ace Combat 5 is the most replayable of the franchise. At least I know it was for me. The aircraft you loaded out your squadron with was directly reflected in the endgame cutscene, something that really stuck out to me and I absolutely adored. It felt like your choices had real meaning, which kept me coming back again and again. While the aircraft list was expansive, you couldn't customize the weapons on the jet at all. What it came with was what you sorted with, unlike Ace Combat 4. I know this was probably done due to either hardware limitation or limited space on the PS2 discs or something, as I'm not 100% sure how much space a weapon customization mechanic takes up. This was the one and only thing Ace Combat 5 lacked in my opinion. If it had come with a weapon customization mechanic, I feel like it would have been perfect. Ace Combat 0 took us back to the aircraft selection type of Ace Combat 4, but gave us one wingman. However, we could never customize their aircraft, only their weapon. This aimed to cement their character into those aircraft because Solo Wing Pixie would have looked weird in another aircraft. That wasn't his signature red-winged F-15, and PJ in his F-16. Still, I feel a bit of choice was taken from the player here, but it makes sense in the story, so I'm willing to forgive it. The type of customization I would have loved to have been included in Ace Combat is a style I've not seen replicated in any flight game on console, save for one, and that is over G Fighters on the Xbox 360. This game was released in 2006, 3 months after the release of Ace Combat 0. Graphically, this game struggled. However, it was as close to DCS on a console as you could ever get, and this was its biggest problem. It was not arcade mode friendly, and it suffered from severe difficulty spikes. Many people who were used to the turn and burn flight sims like Ace Combat picked this one up and hated it. But I feel like this hate was unjust. It is a simu light, meaning the aircraft mechanics and handling were way more realistic to include weapon selection and employment. In this game's normal mode, what you took into combat with you was what you had. This was supplemented by short sortie durations, some missions not lasting longer than 5 minutes, but again, many people were used to the 15 to 20 minute slugfests that were most Ace Combat missions at the time. It wasn't until I had been in the military a while and began my road down more simulation heavy games like ArmA 3 and Lock-On Flaming Cliffs 2 and 3 that I really started to appreciate the realistic approach over G Fighters took. And with that comes my favorite mechanic of all, its weapon customization. You could select whatever weapon you wanted on any of the aircraft pylons. Granted, it was within real life limitations of that pylon. You couldn't go strapping a 2,000 pounder to a wingtip or anything crazy, but you had an incredible amount of choice. This made replaying the game a ton of fun, regardless of how short or how hard some of the missions were. Add on to it that at the start of most missions you would have to taxi and take off with your wingman gave this a real sense of immersion that stood out to me. Something I wish Ace Combat would implement. Yes, there were a couple of scripted missions where you take off with your flight and land upon completion of the mission, which were awesome, but I felt like Ace Combat could have used a little more of it. I know some of you will immediately argue the point of that's not what Ace Combat is about. It's about sexy jets and flying so fast and hard that your nutsack catches on fire, which you're not wrong. Ace Combat is marketed and targeted to the arcade style audience, which is way more user friendly and hand-holdy. But I would turn right around and argue that if they gave their audience a chance to prove that they're not just a one-trick pony and can handle a little more realism in their arcade fight game, that the people would surprise these companies, and in turn the developers would know that their attention to detail and realism while maintaining that simplistic or even slightly more realistic gameplay would net them extraordinary results. The icing on this beautiful combat flight sim cake would be if this perfect Ace Combat launched with Project Wingman's graphics and effects. My god, that game is next level gorgeous, and I'm not trying to shit on Ace Combat 7's beautiful graphics, but there is just something gorgeously stylized about Project Wingman. And finally, if it had a soundtrack like the 3 PS2 Ace Combat titles, then it would absolutely slap. Those gorgeous synth beats and sounds are perfect for fighter pilot feel, and I don't think those soundtracks have been topped by any other arcade flight sim out there. Well guys, that's really all I had on the subject. One of these days, the perfect middle ground flight game will come out and set the stage for flight sims yet to come. As it stands now, we've got Ace Combat, Project Wingman on the far left of the realism spectrum, ArmA 3 somewhere in the middle, leaning more right, and DCS on the far right. I do hope that one day we get a mixture of the best of all of these worlds. I'd like to give a shout out to these fucking legends on your screen right now for being absolute chads, helping me keep my Discord and ArmA 3 server alive. If you'd like to join the ranks of these legends, a link to my Patreon is down below. And finally, I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Let me know what you loved about Ace Combat and what mechanics you'd include in your version of the perfect iteration. Thank you all again for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.